This video is made possible by the free-to-play action game Crossout. Check out the game through the link in the description below, and you can start with 3 extra weapons or a vehicle cabin just for registering. Since its inception as a country, America has produced a relentless fighting spirit, resulting in astonishing acts of valor on all corners of the globe. The task of quantifying courage, however, can be a difficult assignment that involves several factors, including different branches of the military, date of commendation, discontinued and/or upgraded medals, and the prestige of an award. As a measuring stick, it's helpful to understand the basic hierarchy of the most important American citations for bravery. Heading the class is the Congressional Medal of Honor, an award dating back to 1862 during the Civil War, whereby Congress authorized the president to present the citation. The Distinguished Service Cross, DSC, falls next in line along with the Navy Cross. As a rule of thumb, the Silver Star and Bronze Star both carry the same weight, as well as the Purple Heart, a medal given to those wounded in the line of duty. Please do know that this video is by no means definitive or in any particular order. It's merely an attempt to provide a consensus of highly decorated US soldiers from all major conflicts. Also, one glaring omission here is Douglas MacArthur, who technically ranks highest on many polls using an assortment of arbitrary point systems. However, a 5-star general and a man known as American Caesar to sit atop the mountain is kind of like Walt Disney giving himself the honorary key to the Magic Kingdom. Number 10. Daniel Daly. Daly is one of a select group of soldiers to earn the Medal of Honor twice, and would probably have earned it a third time had it not been for a petty ruling at the time, setting the limit at 2. Nonetheless, the battle-hardened Marine is best remembered for his valor in World War II at the Battle of Belleau Wood, where, under intense fire, he famously rallied his men, shouting, "Come on, you sons of a bitches! You want to live forever!" The 44-year-old veteran settled for the Distinguished Service Cross, adding to his pile of medals that also included a Navy Cross, a Silver Star, Médaille Militaire, and the Croix de Guerre. The son of Irish immigrants, Daly stood only at 5'6" and weighed 132 pounds, but he earned a hard-fought reputation as someone who could scrap and never backed down, a resolve that served him well throughout his life. He first joined the Marines in 1899 and took part in the Boxer Rebellion in China, a mostly forgotten war in which American troops found themselves besieged by local Boxer militia forces. Private Daly, armed with only a bolt-action rifle and a bayonet, defended a vulnerable position single-handedly against repeated Chinese attacks. By the time reinforcements arrived the next morning, they found his position littered with the dead bodies of his enemies. Throughout the ordeal, the attackers had yelled "Kwong Fei" at Daly, a term meaning a very bad devil. For his conspicuous gallantry, on August 14, 1900, he received his first Medal of Honor. 15 years later, Gunnery Sergeant Daly earned his second Medal of Honor in Haiti, while combating the local Cacas rebels in a conflict designed to protect American business interests, commonly known as the Banana Wars. Daly's superiors had offered him an officer's commission several times, but he always declined, stating, "I would rather be an outstanding sergeant than just another officer." Perhaps Daly's greatest accolade came from fellow double Medal of Honor winner Major General Smedley Butler, who called Daly the fightingest Marine I ever knew. Number 9. Smedley Butler. At the time of his death in 1940, Butler, aka the Fighting Quaker, had achieved the exalted status as the most decorated Marine in history. It's an impressive accomplishment considering the Corps' core values of honor, courage, and commitment, and fighting to the death wherever American soldiers are needed. During his 33 years of service to Uncle Sam, Major General Butler earned numerous citations, including 2 Medals of Honor, Marine Corps Brevet Medal, and the Order of the Black Star. However, Butler is also a fascinating study in contrast as a man who wore a neck-to-navel Marine Corps tattoo on his chest and later became an outspoken critic of American war profiteering and imperialism. Born and raised in Westchester, PA, by Quaker parents, Smedley Butler possessed a streak of rebellion and sense of adventure at an early age. He joined the Marines just prior to his 17th birthday and eventually served in Cuba, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Haiti. He also fought in the Mexican Revolution at the Battle of Veracruz, where he received his second Medal of Honor. Known for his leadership and undying loyalty to those under his command, he fought on 3 continents before retiring from the military in 1931. He then began a second career as an advocate for pacifism, giving lectures around the country, which later served as the basis for his book, War is a Racket. His message did not mince words regarding the injustice that he could no longer stomach, stating, "At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the World War. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? The general public shoulders the bill. And what is this bill? Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds. For a great many years as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket. Not until I retired to civil life did I fully realize it." Number 8. Edward A. Carter. In 1992, the Secretary of the Army commissioned an independent study to identify African American soldiers whose acts of valor might have been denied the Medal of Honor due to prejudice in both World Wars. Following completion of the report, Sergeant Edward A. Carter from 1916 to 1963 had been identified and recommended for the country's highest award. In 1997, President Clinton presented Carter's posthumous Medal of Honor to his son, Edward Allen Carter III. His citation, in part, reads as follows. On March 23, 1945, near Speyer, Germany, while serving with Company No. 1, 56th Armored Infantry Regiment, 12th Armored Division, when the tank on which he was riding received heavy bazooka and small arms fire, Sergeant Carter voluntarily attempted to lead a three-man group across an open field. Within a short time, 2 of his men were killed and the third seriously wounded. Continuing on alone, he was wounded 5 times and finally forced to take cover. As 8 enemy riflemen attempted to capture him, Sergeant Carter killed 6 of them and captured the remaining 2. He then crossed the field, using as a shield his 2 prisoners, from which he obtained valuable information concerning the disposition of enemy troops. Born in Los Angeles on May 26, 1916 to missionary parents, Carter's path to becoming a national hero involved several foreign stops, including India and China. Eschewing his family's strict non-aggression beliefs, he ran away from home at 15 and enlisted in the Chinese Nationalistic Army to fight against invading Japanese forces. He later wound up in Europe fighting for the Loyalists in the Spanish Civil War with the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, an integrated volunteer unit of mostly American volunteers dedicated to fighting fascism. Upon his return to the United States, Carter joined the Army in 1941 as a sergeant, but soon found himself subjected to racism within the segregated U.S. military. Making matters worse, an intelligence officer at Fort Benning, Georgia, deemed it advisable to put Carter under surveillance because of his background in communist China and fighting on the side of the socialists in Spain. Carter eventually shipped out to Europe in 1944, battle-tested and ready to fight. Upon arrival in the UTO, he was assigned to George S. Patton's Third Army, serving briefly as one of the general's personal bodyguards. By the spring of the following year, and with the end of the war in sight, Carter finally saw combat, but had to accept a demotion to private because he wasn't allowed to command white troops. That would all change after his heroic actions on March 23, 1945, and it saw his sergeant's stripes restored for the remainder of the war. But when Carter attempted to re-enlist prior to the Korean War, his suspect background led to him being discharged without explanation. Unfortunately, the fact that he had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, later upgraded, Purple Heart and Bronze Star, fell on deaf ears and closed minds. Disheartened, he moved back to California, where he later passed away in 1963 at the age of 47 from cancer, a condition his doctors partially attributed to shrapnel that was still in his neck. Although Carter was originally buried in West Los Angeles, his remains have since been moved to their rightful final resting place at Arlington National Cemetery. Number 7. Robin Olds. Gravitas. It's a nuanced word that can be difficult to describe, but easily understood when looking at a photo of a triple ace fighter pilot, Robin Olds. By the way, 5 kills is an ace. He not only looked the part of a superhero, but actually lived it, with his head-from-the-front swagger and his natural-born talent. However, for all of his many outstanding attributes, it was his non-regulation handlebar moustache, dubbed bulletproof, that would bring him his rock star status. The whiskers also pissed off his superiors, which was exactly the point for the rebellious fighter jock who had it all. Raised in a military family, Olds' father had been an aviation pioneer in World War I and eventually rose to the rank of Major General in the Army Air Corps, the precursor to the US Air Force. The younger Olds attended West Point, where he became a football All-American before earning his wings as a pilot in World War II. Shortly after arriving in France in 1944, he earns the first of his 12 confirmed kills during the war, flying P-38s and Mustang P-51s. He later participated in transcontinental jet races and flew with the Air Force's first acrobatic demonstration team, further honing his flying skills and his leadership qualities. But his outspoken demeanor and his demands for improved training and equipment saw him branded as a troublemaker and an iconoclast by higher-ranking officers who kept him grounded during the Korean War. Olds nearly walked away from the military altogether, but eventually took command of the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing in Vietnam. His finest hour came in 1967 when he devised a plan labeled Operation Bolo, in which F-4 Phantoms used radar jamming devices to lure Soviet-made MiG-21s into a trap. When North Vietnamese fighters responded by attacking what appeared to be slower-moving aircraft, the faster F-4s downed 7 enemy jets, including 2 by Olds, in what became the biggest air battle of the war. He would later bag 2 more MiGs, giving him a total of 16 kills in his career. Always the outlaw, he stopped logging his combat missions at 99 to avoid reaching the limit that would rotate him back home. He also didn't want to be used as a publicity tool and avoided adding more kills to his already impressive record. By the time he finally retired from the military, now Brigadier General Olds had been decorated 54 times, and that included the Air Force Cross, which is the Air Force's highest honor. He also had 2 Air Force Distinguished Service Medals, 4 Silver Stars, 6 Distinguished Flying Crosses, the Legion of Merit, and a Croix de Guerre. As for that infamous moustache, Old cemented his legends this way. He stated, "It became the middle finger I couldn't raise in the public relations photographs." He said, "The moustache became my silent word in the verbal battles with higher headquarters on rules, targets, and fighting the war." Number 6. James F. Hollingsworth. Articles and books written about Lieutenant General Hollingsworth often described his unfiltered character as profane, brash, and irreverent. But anyone who fought alongside him during his storied 36 years as a fighting machine held a deep respect for the gruff Texan whose fearlessness on the battlefield was as large as the state that produced him. From World War II to Vietnam and every conflict in between, Hollingsworth left his mark, earning 3 Distinguished Service Crosses, 4 Distinguished Service Medals, 4 Silver Stars, 3 Legion of Merit Medals, 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 6 Purple Hearts, and 4 Bronze Stars. After graduating from the Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas, now Texas A&M, in 1940, he accepted a commission in the U.S. Army as a second lieutenant. He would participate in 7 major campaigns in World War II, rising from platoon leader to battalion tank commander in General George S. Patton's Third Army. During a legendary engagement near the Elbe River in Germany, then Major Hollingsworth encountered well-entrenched German defenders. Seizing the moment befitting of his fiery nature, Holly lined up his 34 tanks and loudly gave the command, "Charge!" As expected, the terrified Germans, they broke and ran. Hollingsworth later added to his colourful reputation and vast collection of medals and commendations as the Assistant Division Commander of the 1st Infantry, Big Red 1, in 1966. In Southeast Asia, he became known by the radio call sign Danger 79er and famously once told a reporter that it felt real good to be killing hell out of the communists. Hollingsworth would be reprimanded by the Army brass for his cavalier raids that included participating in search and destroy missions aboard his helicopter. Now, just before we get into the top 5 today, I do want to take a moment to tell you about Crossout. Crossout is an online vehicle action game set in a post-apocalyptic future. Basically, what you do is you construct your own crazy vehicle all the way from the ground up with all sorts of different parts. It's a super fast-paced game with lots of different game modes, and you've got pretty much limitless freedom to create, and what you do to your vehicle is entirely up to you. You can use resources to build it, you can use things you've scavenged in battle, whatever you need to build your weapon. The game is available on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. So join us on the battlefield for free, by the way, using the link in the description below. And going through that link not only helps support this show, but you'll also get a free starter set with 3 extra weapons or a vehicle cabin. That's all just as a bonus for registering. As always, thank you to Crossout for the sponsorship. Let's get back to that top 5. Number 5, Eddie Rickenbacker. Prior to becoming America's most decorated ace pilot in World War I, Fast Eddie had been a champion race car driver and had a world record at 134 miles per hour. He later swapped uniforms and registered 26 kills in the skies over Europe in just 9 months of aerial combat. Although the infamous Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, is credited with more downed aircraft, that would be 80 by the way, most military historians agree that Rickenbacker's expert stick and throttle skills and natural-born killer instincts put him in a class all by himself. As one of 8 children born to Swiss immigrants in Columbus, Ohio, Rickenbacker's mercurial rise as a national hero is a remarkable tale of talent and determination. When America entered World War I, Rickenbacker enlisted in the army and became a chauffeur on General John Pershing's staff. Fast Eddie set his sights on becoming a pilot in the newly formed Army Air Service, but at 26 years old, he exceeded the age limit by 2 years and also lacked the formal education needed to fly. But with perseverance and a display of undeniable skills, Rickenbacker eventually earned his wings and became commanding officer of the 94th Aero Hat-in-the-Ring Squadron. Once airborne, he wasted little time establishing his reputation as a lethal fighter. He would receive the Medal of Honor on September 25th, 1918, during a voluntary solo patrol behind enemy lines in France. Rickenbacker attacked a squadron of German planes from behind the sun, plunging his Spud biplane into a power dive, a maneuver that became his signature move on the unsuspecting enemy. After shooting down 2 of the planes, he returned to base for a well-deserved hero's welcome. In addition to his Medal of Honor, Rickenbacker received 7 Distinguished Service Crosses and the French Croix de Guerre. Incredibly, his life after the war would prove far more dangerous as he experienced 2 near-fatal plane crashes and became lost at sea for 24 days. Somehow, he managed to survive and went on to become a highly successful businessman and CEO of Eastern Airlines. Number 4. Lewis Chesty Puller. Whether he acquired his nickname for being the cockiest rooster in the yard or simply from all the medals pinned to his chest, this Marine's Marine achieved near mythical status during his 37 years of wreaking havoc on the enemy. Puller's quest for military glory began at an early age while growing up near the hallowed grounds of Northern Virginia, where he listened to old war stories about Confederate legends such as Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. Puller briefly attended the Virginia Military Institute before dropping out to go where the guns are and fulfill his dream of becoming a career soldier. After missing out on World War I, he experienced his first taste of combat in Haiti and later earned the first of his 5 Navy Cross medals, the most ever awarded, while fighting a guerrilla insurgency in Nicaragua. His personal motto of leading by example became the stuff of legend, taking part in some of the bloodiest fights in World War II and the Korean War. At the Battle of Guadalcanal, Puller became wounded by sniper fire and shrapnel, which only made him angrier as he repeatedly rallied his vastly outnumbered men against a barrage of Japanese attacks. Lieutenant General Puller eventually surpassed Smedley Butler to become the most decorated Marine, but he never received a Medal of Honor, an egregious snub that remains a hotly debated subject with military experts and historians alike. Puller's heroic exploits and unwavering loyalty to the Corps are just a few reasons why, to this day, Marines at boot camp typically end each day declaring "Good night, Chesty Puller," wherever you are. Number 3. Audie Murphy. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. This is a fitting introduction indeed for the larger-than-life figure of Audie Murphy. Ironically, this pint-sized Texan, he stood at 5 foot 5 inches tall, and that's being generous, was repeatedly rejected for military service due to his physical shortcomings. Finally, the army said yes, and the man called Baby proceeded to kill 250 enemy soldiers to become commonly known as the most decorated soldier of World War II. In 1945, during a particularly brutal firefight near the German village of Holzwehr, Murphy produced one of the greatest acts of courage in American military history. With his company in retreat and facing certain annihilation from enemy artillery, the fearless 19-year-old climbed on top of a burning M10 tank, tossing dead bodies aside, and commanded a 50 caliber machine gun. Despite being severely wounded, he held off a steady wave of German infantry and tanks for over an hour, actions for which he would later receive the Medal of Honor. After the war, he wrote a best-selling memoir to hell and back and also became a Hollywood movie star. And yes, he did his own stunts. In addition to his Medal of Honor, he earned a Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, the French Fouragier, the French Legion of Honor, Croix de Guerre with Palm and Silver Star, and the Belgian Croix de Guerre. Number 2. David Hackworth. Some boys dream of running away to join the circus. David Hackworth left home at 14 in search of war. Incredibly, he would earn 91 medals as one of the most decorated soldiers who ever lived, including 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, 10 Silver Stars, 8 Bronze Stars, and 8 Purple Hearts. He won a battlefield commission at 20 to become the youngest captain in the Korean War and was the youngest full-bird colonel in Vietnam. Movie buffs will appreciate that he served as the inspiration for the rogue colonel in Apocalypse Now. After catching the tail end of World War II as a merchant marine, he joined the army and rose quickly through the ranks. He commanded the Wolfhound Raiders, an all-volunteer regiment in Korea, where during an intense firefight he was shot in the head but refused to quit fighting. By the time the next war rolled around, he had become an expert on guerrilla warfare tactics and would co-author the Veteran Primer, a manual on counterinsurgency that's still in use today. But as the war in Vietnam dragged on, Hackworth became more rebellious and independent, as well as increasingly frustrated with the Pentagon. In a 1971 interview with ABC television, he even went so far as to say that the war couldn't be won. His candor caught American top brass off guard. After all, they expected to see his star continually rise, or, as Coppola later put it, he was being groomed for one of the top spots in the corporation: General, Chief of Staff, anything. Following Hackworth's controversial statements, the army floated the possibility of a court-martial, but the colonel was eventually allowed to resign with an honorable discharge. Later on, he turned to writing and journalism, penning his best-selling autobiography About Face, The Odyssey of an American Warrior. Additionally, he founded Soldiers for Truth, an advocacy group dedicated to military reform, both in terms of improved capability as well as the treatment of personnel. Number 1. Robert L. Howard. John Wayne spent most of his career portraying fictional heroes on the silver screen. Colonel Robert L. Howard spent most of his career portraying a hero on the battlefield, and that would be himself. He also, by the way, found the time to later appear in 2 of the Duke's films. These were The Longest Day and The Green Berets. But for someone like Howard, the word hero doesn't even begin to describe this enlisted man from Alabama who became the most decorated soldier of the modern era. For those not familiar with Howard's remarkable story, there's a good reason. Most of his service involved highly classified covert ops behind enemy lines. In his extraordinary 36 years in uniform, he became a paratrooper, pathfinder, airborne ranger, Green Beret, and finally a full colonel before he retired in 1992. As a member of Special Forces, he served in the top-secret Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group, which ran cross-border operations along the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam, and conducted some of the most gutsy and dangerous missions of the war. His duty included 5 tours in which he received 8 Purple Hearts, although he was wounded 14 times in total and was nominated for the Medal of Honor on 3 separate occasions during a 13-month span. The first 2 actions resulted in a Distinguished Service Cross and a Silver Star, but his third act of conspicuous gallantry earned him the Medal of Honor when he was on a mission to rescue a fellow soldier in Cambodia. Howard passed away in 2009 at the age of 70 and was buried with full honors at Arlington National Cemetery. As of 2019, Hollywood is still trying to figure out who could convincingly play this real-life Rambo. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, please do check out the sponsor for today. That's Crossout. You'll find them linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.